On the southern edge of Edinburgh's Old Town stands Greyfriars Kirk, a magnificent old church which dates back to the 1600s. Surrounding this church is Greyfriars Kirkyard, one of the most interesting and perhaps one of the most haunted graveyards in Scotland, if not the world. If you know about Greyfriars at all, you might know about it thanks to one of its many celebrity inhabitants. Buried here is William McGonagall, a man widely, and if you've read his poetry quite fairly, acknowledged as the worst poet ever to have lived. And in recent years, the grave of a merchant known as Tom Riddle has also attracted a huge amount of attention. J.K. Rowling wrote some of her world-famous Harry Potter books in nearby cafes, and there's great speculation that she might have named her characters after some of the people buried there. The most famous inhabitant, though, is perhaps Greyfriars Bobby. Greyfriars Bobby was a terrier who belonged to a night watchman named John Grey. John and Bobby would often be seen patrolling the rainy streets of Edinburgh together, at least until John's untimely death from tuberculosis in 1858. John was buried in Greyfriars Kirkyard, and little Bobby, bereft at the loss of his owner, proceeded to stand guard over his grave night and day for the next 14 years. Throughout his life, Bobby became quite the local celebrity. Though unowned, he was well looked after by the community. Staff at the graveyard built him a little shelter, and a local coffee house owner made sure to feed him each day. When it became mandatory for dogs in the city to have a collar in 1867, the Lord Provost of Edinburgh made sure to get one for Bobby so that he wouldn't be considered a stray. When Bobby died, he joined his owner in the graveyard. The pair finally reunited after more than a decade apart. A statue of him now stands just outside the kirkyard and is immensely popular with tourists. It is thought that rubbing his nose might bring you good luck, and so many people now do so that the poor dog's nose is visibly wearing away. Famous as they may be, Greyfriars Bobby, Tom Riddle and William McGonagall are all quite benign residents. Much more troublesome is a man known by some as Bloody Mackenzie. Sir George Mackenzie was a Scottish lawyer, writer and Lord Advocate of Edinburgh. As Lord Advocate, he had a great many responsibilities, not least of which was persecuting Covenanters. Covenanters were a movement, tens of thousands strong, of Presbyterians who basically pledged to resist the imposition of any changes by an English monarch to the Church of Scotland. As a matter of fact, many people literally signed a covenant to this effect in Greyfriars Kirkyard itself in 1638. Well, Mackenzie, under orders from the king, was, to say the least, displeased by this show of resistance. When an army of militant Covenanters were defeated by government troops at the Battle of Bothwell Bridge in 1679, Mackenzie ordered that hundreds of the defeated Covenanters be imprisoned in a makeshift outdoor jail in a corner of Greyfriars Kirkyard. They were locked in without shelter from the elements, and with only a tiny amount of food and water, and then, for the most part, they were left to die. A few prisoners were executed, but it was simple neglect and maltreatment that led to the deaths of many of the wretched souls imprisoned within. The part of the kirkyard where Covenanters were kept has since been built on, but there's still a narrow strip known as the Covenanters' Prison that lay adjacent to this enclosure. It was things like locking up the Covenanters to die, as well as authorising things like disembowelings, that saw George Mackenzie given the nickname Bloody Mackenzie. When he died in 1691, he was buried in Greyfriars Kirkyard too, though his tomb has long since been left untended as a mark of respect to all of the people he persecuted and killed. Now, while Bloody Mackenzie might be long since dead and gone, some people believe that his spirit lives on. Indeed, within the walls of Greyfriars Kirkyard, there have been an incredible number of reported encounters with an unseen entity that's generally referred to as the Mackenzie Poltergeist. These all started in 1999 when a homeless man, seeking a place to stay for the night, broke into Bloody Mackenzie's final resting place and promptly fell through the floor down into the crypt itself. Ever since the tomb was disturbed in this incident, visitors to the kirkyard have reported all manner of unsettling phenomena. People have felt themselves being grabbed or struck by something they cannot see, or have come away with burns and scratches. Visitors have reported strange sounds, odd smells, and even seeing dark shapes moving within the mausoleum itself. More than 100 people are reported to have fainted in the vicinity of the mausoleum. There have been so many reported encounters, in fact, that there has been not one but 2 attempts to exorcise the tomb, both apparently unsuccessful. One was so rampantly unsuccessful that the exorcist died of a heart attack just 2 weeks later, possibly unrelated. If the spirit of Bloody Mackenzie was upset by someone stumbling into his tomb in search of shelter, he must have been positively enraged by an incident which took place a few years later, when 2 teenage boys smashed their way into the mausoleum, opened his grave, and lopped off his mummified head with a penknife. They then proceeded to play a series of obscene games with his skull, including sticking a fist inside it and using it like a glove puppet. The pair were caught by a tour guide after returning to the scene of the crime to show off what they'd done to a girl one of them fancied. Quite the romantic gesture. Since this rather bizarre desecration, reports of encounters with the Mackenzie poltergeist have rocketed into the thousands. Though of course millions of people visit Greyfriars Kirkyard each year to leave a stick for Bobby the Terrier or have a Harry Potter souvenir photo taken in front of Tom Riddle's grave, none of them ever noticing the angry spirit which purportedly resides there.